A collaboration that works is a melody, not a solo. And it's important for the people who are a party to that collaboration to remember that. And different voices are going to take the lead in different parts of the book. And you have to be willing for that to happen too. So I enjoy doing collaborations. As I say, it is sometimes a problem simply because of time constraints. But I think that there is a perception sometimes that collaborations are a way to get a name author's work out there without the name author having to do the work. And I am not at all willing in doing that type, not at all interested in doing that type of a collaboration. I think that Bain doesn't do very many of those. And Bain has never asked me to do one of those. Now, that's not to say that piggybacking a good newcomer onto an established author is somehow illegitimate, especially not if the new author is pulling his or her own weight. The Zelazny novel Donnerjack, which was completed after his death, was completed by Jane Linscoe. And Jane actually wrote, the huge bulk of that book from Roger's partial notes and discussions that she'd had with him before time. I mean, he'd been bouncing ideas off of her and whatnot before the book went together. Well, the reviews are all Seminole, Zelazny, you know, blah, 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 blah. And Avon at that time wanted to downplay Jane's involvement. This was supposed to be a Roger Zelazny book. Well, I always thought that that was incredibly short-sighted of them. And I thought that both as a writer and as someone whose background is in marketing. When you have the last book you're ever going to get from an author and you're publishing it posthumously, and you have this very gifted young writer who is a major factor in the success of this book and who may be with you for another 30 or 40 years, okay, then by all means give the new writer credit for at least his or her actual contribution to the work. But it doesn't work that way. People want to ride on the coattails of the name author. And sometimes the readership simply assumes that that had to be the way it was, when in fact it isn't. And that's unfortunate. But, okay?
To go back to a previous discussion, you were talking about making the right choices, the philosophical background. Do you think that was a driving reason that the honor books became part of the War College curriculum?
Didn't know that they had. They were used as assigned reading in an OCS program. It was a joint Navy Marine. I was informed by one of the instructors that they were using them as assigned reading. But what I was told in his case was, well, we tell them to forget all about the duels and the busting your superior officers in the chops, and we tell them not to think about death rides. You know, that's not really what we're after. They said in terms of an officer's responsibilities and his or her responsibilities not just to command authority but to the men and women under command. He said, you know, we feel like you've really kind of cut to the heart of where that ought to be, and we want to work upon and illustrate that side of it. I think that it's one reason that I have a hefty readership in the military. I got a letter from a Jesuit chaplain. This was years ago, and he said, I just wanted to thank you for writing science fiction, which has an unabashed moral quotient, I think was the way that he put it. He said, you know, it's not that you sit there and lecture and hammer, but it's that it is clear that the characters' morality bound up in the decisions they make are important to who they are and what constitutes good and evil. And he says it's also nice to see somebody who does allow religion to creep into science fiction and who doesn't then treat it either as a caricature to be beaten on with a stick or lecture, this is the way everyone ought to believe. He said, you know, that's rare. That he said in his letter, and I think he probably had a point, that he felt that there was a certain anti-religious intolerance in science fiction. I have found that there are a great many people involved in reading science fiction and in writing it for whom religion in life is definitely very much alive and very much part of who they are. By the same token, I can understand where that anti-religious intolerance is coming from on the part of many readers. Science fiction has always been a refuge for the very bright outcast, okay, the geek, if you will, the person who doesn't really fit into a comfortable social template and who is looking for a template that he or she does fit into. And many of those people have been or believe that they have been folded, bent, spindled, or mutilated by society with the approval of the religious establishment. And others, I think, kind of, their attitude is, you know what, if there's really a God out there, he's not doing a very good job, and therefore, you know, why should I believe in him? And I can't dispute. You know, it is, I think, not my place or anyone else's place to tell someone else what he or she must believe. I know what I could wish that they believed, and if they want to discuss it, I'll be perfectly willing to explain to them why. But I'm not going to sit down and say, first, you have to listen to me, and this is the way it has to be. That's not my job, and it's not my concept of what my God would want me to do. Okay? Because, as I say, you have to be free to make those decisions. But I can understand where that strand that he was talking about comes from. And sometimes you have to tread a little warily as a consequence. I don't believe I've ever made any particular secret of what my own convictions and beliefs are. But I also don't believe that I have ever attempted to hammer my beliefs and my convictions down someone else's throat. You know, I may give similar beliefs to characters who I expect you to like and admire, and thereby kind of sneak them into your consideration. Yeah, I've been known to do that on occasion. But I think every writer does that.